Hey everyone, thanks for coming to the first of these stream time-lapse videos, where we'll be looking at some of the ideas, techniques, and notes from art that we've worked on previously on the streams. With this one, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted the piece to be, so we didn't have to spend as long doing gesture poses or blocking out the composition. We could really get much faster into defining a lot of the ideas, setting up the proportions, and making sure that everything adhered well to the lower perspective that we were going for. There was a brief move where I had initially sketched out the helmet and realized that I had drawn it too small, so I brought it over and scaled it up against the head just to make sure that it would appear that it could actually fit over the cranium, and then reposition it on top of the box. I also initially drew the box in a very heads-on perspective, which didn't really fit with the overall composition, so I had to bring it into a third dimension and add that additional corner, make that much more visible. During the coloring process, I will sometimes use clown colors, or I might just sample from whatever reference images I have available. This was a combination of both, and I initially was going to use the exact colors of the outfit from Helldivers, but felt that a few changes to make it more personalized were appropriate for the drawing. After the initial color and lighting phase, it's time to get into the paint over process. And I find, especially with some of the hard surface objects like the helmet, the gun, and the armor, it's a lot easier to add in small details that can be difficult to define very clearly in the line and sketch phase. There are also certain elements like the angles of the face and positions of the legs that I'll make corrections to here. Certain things will look good in line work, but then not appear so good once you start adding dimensionality of lighting. I had also initially set up the halo to use my normal colors, but it was feeling a little bit standoutish from the rest of the outfit, so I felt that changing it over to use the same coloring as the armor in the Helldivers coat would make more sense. One of the processes with the initial setup that is vital for the paint over is figuring out the various colors that we're going to be using. So by setting up the local colors of the albedo, as well as the lighting information, that gives me the palette that I'm able to use throughout the rest of the drawing. So rarely do I have to be going over to the color picker in the program and figuring things out. I can sample directly from the canvas and carry that color over to wherever I need it. So if I'm adding, say, additional buckles or metal plating, I already have all the color samples that I need for that process. Now, for a while I was going back and forth on how I wanted to handle the draping cloth on the front there. And what I ultimately realized is what would make the most sense was to have it resting on top of the box rather than falling in front of it. So that was just a quick correction to change the direction and add some folds. I had already set up the drawing to use the hooded stare into the distance, but to really drive home the haunted, battle-damaged feel, I decided to use the broken eye design from my character. Typically during the setup process, I will underdraw certain volumes like the hair, because it is easier to build up the volumes in the paint over, adding small details like cowlicks, stray hairs, etc., than it is to reduce a volume that is overdrawn. Now, when I started working on the background, I realized that I had initially set up the wall to have more of a stone facade to it. The way that it looked like it was collapsing was sort of a stony, crumbling and fragmenting approach. Whereas in Helldivers, all of the buildings are metal prefabs. So there was a bit of a repurposing process to go in and make that look more appropriate. Found some reference images of what destroyed metal looks like in the way that it tears and scratches as opposed to crumbles. I also added a few battle damage effects like the large hole to the character's right to really help reinforce that appearance. And late in the design, I also felt that adding a little bit of a secondary light source in the bottom right would help to reinforce the war-torn effect. The idea that there was this glowing, smoldering fire just off screen. I find that when you have objects that are in the distance or objects that are in motion, blurring them is not the best approach to obscure their detail from the viewer. Doing so prevents the viewer from being able to focus closer on them when they want to. It is just perpetually out of focus. Whereas reducing the overall detail, simplifying them to silhouettes or adding just a little bit of information, gives the appropriate feel that they are in the distance, they are secondary, or their visual is obscured without preventing the viewer from being able to focus on them. So then we just wrap up with some fine-tuning of the details, correcting a few things, adding a little bit of visual flair, some smoldering embers, and doing a post-process layer to draw attention towards the focal areas, typically the face, and bring it away from the borders a little bit. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. I hope to do more of these in the future, so please let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and have a good one.